Hello, everybody. This is Cody Bateman. Welcome to a brand new episode of our Relationship Marketing Podcast. Shout out to all of you listeners right now. First of all, just want to thank all of you for your participation in this show week after week. All of the wonderful things that you're doing out there to be kind to other human beings, to create genuine human connection with other human beings in your business. We talk on this show a lot about your occupation being your number one source or way to create relationships with other human beings. So is your occupation about creating genuine human connection, or is your occupation about making money or making a living? If you can get your mind to shift to your occupation being about creating genuine human connection first, then great things happen for you to be able to master this thing called relationship marketing. And we've got guests on here every single week. They all bring their expertise to the table. We've got a guy on today that's amazing. One of my favorites. He's actually been on the show before. He's been a speaker at the Relationship Marketing Grand Summit. He's a speaker again at the virtual summit coming up here in the next week or so on September 9th. The one and only Mr. James Muir. How you doing, my friend?
Good, Cody. How are you?
Great to have you on with us. Most people don't know you're my neighbor just up the street. I'm working from my home office in Riverton, Utah, and you're probably about 8 miles away from me in Harriman, Utah. Is that right?
That is correct. I live here up by the mountains, so we're very close to each other.
Kind of funny. We interview people from all over the world. 2 weeks ago, I had a lady on here from Melbourne, Australia. And she was 6,000 miles away, or however far that is, and you're 8 miles away. So at the end of the day, we're all just human beings, no matter where we're at, and making a contribution in the world. And you're doing some incredible stuff out there, my friend. I'm going to tell our audience a little bit about you here in just a second, but again, I just want to take my hat off to you, and I'm just a great fan of yours. You're doing great work out there, brother. And I just want you to know how much I really appreciate that.
You made my day with that.
Wow.
It means a lot coming from you.
You've earned it. You've earned it. You're a great guy. So here's what's interesting. So let me just tell you a little about this guy. He's the CEO of Best Practice International and the best-selling author of a book called The Perfect Close. If you have not heard of The Perfect Close, my goodness, go on Amazon or wherever James tells you to go here today. Get a copy of The Perfect Close. You know, that's talking about closing the deal, closing the sale, The Perfect Close. Man, it's such a good book. And it's interesting because the first thing is, this show is all about relationship marketing, creating relationships. It's all about relationships and not the sale. It's not about closing the deal. It's about creating relationship. And here I got a guy on here that's, for all intents and purposes, it looks like you're all about the close. Like you have a book that's titled The Perfect Close. So a lot of people think that you're the close guy. You're the hard-nosed close guy. But the first thing I noticed when I read your book and when I heard you speak is you kind of twist it all up, because you title it The Perfect Close, but the way you get to the perfect close is all about relationship. And so,
and I can't tell you the number of people that told me my book was titled wrong, because they said, "Oh, I thought it was a book about closing, and now you're telling me it's about being authentic and being genuine and all this kind of stuff." And I mean, there is stuff about closing, but the truth is that's where it all starts. And it really ends right there. It's all about being authentic.
I think that's a great way to start. Why is it that so many people, they see this title, The Perfect Close. They see that you're going to speak somewhere about the perfect close, and they want to show up and they want to see the 4 steps to the perfect close. That's what they want. They want that. And then they get into your stuff and realize they're going to get the answer to the perfect close, but not in the way they thought.
Yeah, there's more behind it than they think. But just for those who are wondering, there's 2 questions and they'll get you 95% success on your close ratio. And I'll be sharing those at the Relationship Marketing Grand Summit. So there's a payoff there, both in the book and in the session that we're going to be doing at the Relationship Marketing Grand Summit. But the whole point and a big part of the book and all that is that intent matters more than technique does. And the reason for that is in the first couple seconds when you meet a person, what they do subconsciously is they figure out, can I trust this person, right? They're checking to see whether or not you're doing what you're doing for them or to them. And then the next thing they check is to see whether you're competent enough to execute whatever your intention is. And what that means is that your intention actually matters more so than your competence. And in selling, a lot of times people get this backwards. They think, oh, if I just prove that I'm the best, whatever, that I'm going to win. But actually, the psychology completely disproves that. And what people do is, if it turns out that they think that you don't have their best intentions in mind, in most cases, the deal's off. It really doesn't matter how competent you are at that. There are some strange exceptions to that, like you'll pick a brain surgeon even if they don't have a good bedside manner, you might do that because you need the most competent you can. But in most cases, people will do business with people that they like and trust, and that's because they know that they could be taken advantage of if the other person's withholding information. And if they sense that at all, what they do is the whole sales process falls apart and becomes dysfunctional because, Cody, they'll withhold information from you. They're like, oh, I'm not going to share him with it because that person's clearly going to use it against me in some way. So now, how can you possibly help somebody out if you can't get a good diagnosis of what's going on because they're not sharing information? How are you supposed to prescribe anything, right? And so that's the irony of it all, is that the intent matters more than technique does. And so the truth is, you could use the technique that you learn in the Perfect Close, and you could slaughter it as long as they can tell that you're authentic and you're intentional and trying to help. They're going to let you mess it up and they'll still come back for more. But if they ever smell that you're in it for you, like my friends call it commission breath, right? If they sense that you got commission breath, in most cases, it's over right there.
Especially today. I mean, it's more and more that way all the time. I mean, I remember in the 80s, early 90s, you could finagle your way through stuff back then. You could be seasoned and polished and super cool and know all these techniques and close deals like crazy, but there's been a massive shift to where those techniques just flat don't work anymore. And it is more and more about relationship. And of course we talk about that every single week. I've recently given a speech where I talked about, do you want to be interesting or interested? I think that's what you're saying. What you're saying is, you can be interesting with all your tactics. And like you said, it's, what did you say? Intent versus what?
Intent matters more than technique.
And yeah, so you could be all about technique when intent is really what's important. So in other words, do you spend your time trying to be interesting with your techniques or trying to be interested in what your prospect needs or whoever you're talking to, what their needs are?
Yeah, it's a classic Stephen Covey, right? Seek first to understand, then to be understood, right?
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things I love about your whole thing is what we're talking about right now is in those two questions. So how to triple your close ratio with just two questions, which is core to all your training. It's core to your book. It's core to your keynote speeches. It holds the audience in. It's super good stuff. But those two questions is the essence of what we're talking about, isn't it?
It really is.
If you want to share those today, people to, yeah.
Well, we'll be sharing all 5 versions of the Perfect Close. So we can share the kindergarten version on our podcast today.
Sure.
And what I would just say before I share the questions is, before you go into any interaction, you should have an idea of what you're hoping to get out of it. Like what would you like the client to do? What's the best possible outcome? We would call that, in the sales parlance, we'd call that an advance. Neil Rackham's the one who coined that phrase. And then I would suggest that you have a couple of backups. Like, just in case your ideal advance turns out to be not realistic for some reason, what's a good second? It's like having a backup plan. What's a good backup plan for things? And the reason for that, let me just frame it out a little bit more, is people are hoping that you're a coach. You're going to coach them through all the little steps it takes them to get the big result that they're going for. And so the reason they're engaging you is because they can't do it. If they could do it on their own, they wouldn't even be talking to you, right? So they're hoping when they meet with you that you can help them through the little steps. So you should have that in mind, because that's what makes you a competent facilitator. So if you know what your advances are going into your conversation, it's really simple. The very first question, and I should maybe say this before, is a company named gong.io. These guys do call analytics for outbound calling, and they analyze them, and they try to answer the question, hey, what's the best closing technique? What's the best one that you could use, right? And they analyzed over 1 million calls, and what they determined is the questions that I'm going to share with you right now are hands down the best closing technique that's out there, and that the best top performers actually are using it about 3 times per hour, which should tell you that it doesn't get old. Okay. Yeah. So with that said, the first question is going to be some variation of, what do you think is does it make sense for us to X? That's what the first question is, where X is whatever your ideal advance is, right? So if I'm doing an assessment for Cody, I'd say, hey, Cody, does it make sense for us to do an assessment for you to see what our best options are? Okay, in that case, the assessment is the X. And there's really only 2 things they can say. They're either going to say yes or they're going to say no. If they say yes, awesome. You got your advance. You can move on to one of the other variations I can tell you later called add-on, or they'll say no. And if they say no, in the simplest version, what we do is we just throw the ball back to the client, and we're going to say, oh, well, okay, what do you think is a good next step then? And that sounds so easy. Yeah. And what I can tell you is I've done hundreds of ride-alongs where I'm just sitting right there with the salesperson while I watch it all happen. And in 90% of cases, the client will just suggest a very logical next step for where they're at in their process. You don't need to manipulate them. You don't need to pressure them or any of that. In fact, this might surprise you, Cody. 50 to 90% of all sales encounters end without anybody asking for any kind of commitment at all. On either side. It's nuts. It's nuts, right? So the problem of not asking at all is actually quite a bit bigger than the problem of asking in the wrong way. And what this does is it lets us ask in a way that's no pressure. It's unobtrusive. It's actually facilitative, right? I mean, if you're not sure if the thing you're buying, you'd buy once in a lifetime or twice in a lifetime. And I said, well, other clients at this stage typically do this thing, right? Does it make sense for us to do that? We're just helping. We're just facilitating their thinking there. So as it turns out, those 2 simple questions, does it make sense for us to X? And what do you think is a good next step? Turn out to be the thing that actually gets people to move forward more than any other phrase.
Yeah, I just want everybody to really think about those 2 questions for a second, because they're nothing more than putting your attention back on the person. We're all about here creating genuine human connection with other human beings. What better way to do that than to address your questions onto their needs? Does it make sense if we do X? That's putting it, that's part of assessment. That question is part of the assessment. Hey, listen, do you think it makes sense if we do X? That's showing genuine respect for the person that you're talking to. There's no pressure whatsoever. It's easy to say, and again, if they say no, well, what do you think would be, how could I help you? What do you think your next step would be? And again, that's a respectful conversation with somebody. That's just putting them first.
Yes.
That's what I love about those 2 questions. It's always putting them first in that assessment.
And it's easy to get the nuance of question 1 wrong. People, sometimes when you first teach them, they get it wrong, actually. And if you think about what does it make sense, what is that? That's actually not even a question. It's not even a closing question. It's a timing question. Yeah. You're saying, is the time right for us to do this? So do you see how much respect and control that gives to the client, as opposed to you saying, hey, do you want to buy 400 or 500? Do you want to buy blue or green, or one of these other manipulative alternate choice type closes? We're just saying, hey, is the timing right for us to do this? And the beauty of it is you haven't actually asked them to do that yet. You're just asking about the timing of it. So even if they say no, you are emotionally light years ahead of any kind of direct commitment close, because they could see the direction you're going, but you're just trying to test to see if it's right for them. And if it turns out they say, hey, yeah, that sounds good, then they know the next thing you're going to do is, all right, well, let's get our calendars out and let's schedule it, right? So it's really very, very respectful of the client. There's so much material out there about salespeople trying to control, quote unquote, the sale. And the truth is, control is illusion, my friends. Is they are free agents. And so the best thing you can do is actually just help them facilitate to move the sale forward at the pace that they're ready for. It's when we try to move it faster than they're ready for, that's when it starts to feel like manipulation to them.
So we are listening to the one and only James Muir, the founder and CEO of Best Practice International. He is the best-selling author of the book, The Perfect Close. And he has a brand new book coming out this December. I don't know if you want to share what that's titled or not. I know you got kind of a theme that goes along with what you do, but you want to talk to us a little bit about the new book?
Sure. Well, so the working title is Perfect Close. You know, you always have to debate those things with your publisher, but right now that will be the working title. And it's going to be really the first book that focuses in depth on the B2B referral close.
Okay,
It will include B2C, but it's also, there's not much material out there in terms of how do you develop a B2B process for getting referrals.
so let me back up a sec. So you said perfect close, but you meant the perfect
Referral.
So yeah, I think we're
Thank
still
you.
thinking
Old
about
habits die hard.
So yeah, you've been saying the perfect close for so long now. Now a new book coming out called The Perfect Referral, which
Correct.
is interesting because you're the close guy, and now you're talking about referrals. So the perfect referral coming out in December. So what's the perfect referral?
Well, so an interesting thing is when you survey all businesses right now, by far, the top challenge, by far, is business development and lead generation, by far. The next two things combined don't even add up to what the top challenge is. So this is what businesses, entrepreneurs, professionals, they're all trying to generate additional business is the top challenge that they're having right now in today's environment, probably especially in a, sort of a post-COVID world environment. And when you look at all these different channels of how to do it, when I say a channel, there's lots of different ways to try to generate leads as a business. And I'm just cutting to the chase here for the sake of time. When you look at all the different ways that you can generate leads, referrals by a landslide completely slaughters every other channel by a country mile. I mean, it is so much bigger that it is hard to see who second place is. And when I first got into sales, I only used one channel. It was cold calling. Okay, that's the only, and cold calls, if you didn't know, converted about 1%. That's what they convert at. It might be even less than that today. But referrals, on the other hand, convert anywhere between 50 to 80%. When I say convert to opportunities, and then the actual conversion to sales is almost as high. It's like it's close to 80% once it becomes an opportunity. And so what you're competing with, and if I'd have thought, I'd have brought you a chart that you could pop up for your group so they could see this, but I'll show it. I'll show it when we do the Relationship Marketing Grand Summit. The next closest thing is not even a fraction of that. It's literally 500 to 800% more effective to get referrals than any other single channel. And the reason for that is what you've been talking about, is that when we get a referral, we're tapping into the shared trust or relationship that two people have in each other, right? And it is hands down the strongest way of generating new business that there is. So the big question would be, well, then for heaven's sakes, why don't we do it more often? Right? I mean, that's the thing that I hear. And one of the things that I hear quite a few things, but by far the number one thing I hear is that, well, I just forget. And so what that means is we don't have a system. And really what we need is just to have a system to help us, remind us, so that we're consistent about it instead of letting the referral part of it happen by accident. And that actually is where I think send out cards is wonderful, is having a process. Every time you meet a customer, if you just send them a card afterwards, thank you. We don't pitch them in the card. We just thank them for the opportunity to be with them and how grateful we are to have the relationship. At some point, the timing becomes right for them. We call it incident-driven sales, where they're like, oh, hey, this is the time that I need that. In fact, when they actually analyze when people decline, this happens a lot. In sales, someone will say, yes, I'm interested. And then these opportunities, they sort of languish and they never get over the finish line. When they actually go back and they study that, why that happens, what happens in 90% of cases, like it's in the 90th percentile, is that the timing is just not right for the client. And so one of the ways that we combat that is we just make sure that we're top of mind, that they understand that we're here and we're ready to help when they're ready to do something. And I personally, as a personal user of send out cards, I can tell you that that is a great way of reminding them. And so when that incident happens, when the trigger event takes place that says, hey, now the timing is right, then they know we're ready there and ready to help them. And that makes a huge difference. And when that happens, just like with any other referral, by the way, they end up coming to us and then we have essentially zero competition. Yeah. Right? When we get referred in by somebody else, they're not saying, hey, I'm out here evaluating 10 different solutions. What they do is they just go for the one that they already have a trust relationship with, or a shared trust relationship if it was a referral. And that makes a huge, huge difference.
So you're about to speak again at the Relationship Marketing Grand Summit. It's coming up here in a couple of weeks, and many of our listeners have not attended. You know, this is only our second one, but did not attend the first one. One of the things one of the great values of the RMGS summit is that you have speaker after speaker and panel after panel and just process after process of people that are really showing you how to generate referrals. I mean, that's really a common theme with almost every speaker is their little methodologies of how to generate and create referrals. And it's far more than just sending a card to somebody. I mean, there's a whole list of things that you do to create referrals. You know, and appreciation is probably at the top of the list. I mean, what you appreciate appreciates. If you appreciate people for, you know, by just saying thank you and whatnot, they do remember and they will appreciate your business, meaning they'll bring you referrals in the future. And you just keep recognizing them as they're in your pipeline. So you've participated in the RMGS, you've been a speaker, and you sat and listened to other speakers. Why should pretty much anybody who is in business attend that, especially the virtual one where you can attend it from anywhere? I mean, what is the real value in going to something like that?
I would say pound for pound, time in to what you get out, it slaughters every other event that I've been to. Okay. And that's saying a lot. And the reason for it is because it is essentially all focused on the absolute number one best channel. And what I loved the most about it is the people are just so amazing. And I really, I have every person I meet, it doesn't matter who they are. I mean, I remember afterwards lining up, talking to people, taking pictures, and it's just the camaraderie that you get and the authentic nature of all the people. It's just very different and better than any other event that I've been to. And you're going to get that speaker after speaker. I mean, I know your roster. I've been promoting it now for about a month, and I just love everyone that's involved in the event. There's not a single person I wouldn't recommend. And so I really think of all the different things that you could spend time on. This really is pound for pound the best use of your time, because you're like let's pretend that you were thinking about learning how to do cold calling or something like that. Well, it's still only going to convert at 1%, guys, maybe 2% if you go to a seminar and you really soup up your process. So you're playing to the wrong thing, is what I'm saying. It's the highest leverage potential that you have. In fact, I'll share something with you, Cody, that will blow your mind. So when I was in the corporate world, I ran a region, and in this region, we ended up with a debate with the marketing department about where all the leads were coming from. Okay. And you'll just crack up. So basically what they're saying is, oh, this percentage of our leads are coming from SEO, and this percentage is coming from the website and all this kind of stuff. And by the way, there's a word for that. It's called attribution. And I wouldn't get into that debate. I'm just going to share something that'll probably blow your mind here. And so we got this debate about where all these leads are coming. So I hired a person from my region to follow up on every lead that had come in for a quarter. It was almost 1,000. It was like 980 something. Okay. And what I had this girl do is she called and contacted every single one of those to find out how they got involved with this. Like and the thing that she asked that turned out to be a big deal is she said, what caused you to do X, whatever it was in the first place? So if they went to our website, she'd say, well, what caused you to go to our website to begin with? Or if they typed our name in the Google search engine, she'd say, well, what made you type in, search for us in Google to begin with? And this is the thing that came out of that. In 74% of cases, we could trace it back to a person who had turned them on to us. 74. Right? And I'm not the only person that's saying that, right? BNI has come up with numbers like that. 70%, I think, is their number. And New York Times also came up with it's a 65% number. And so, kind of what I'm trying to say here is that regardless of what you might think your lead sources are coming from my perspective, if you go do your homework, somewhere around 74% of all leads are actually coming from referrals. And so to try to focus your energy in some other place, really, it doesn't really make much sense, because this is where it's all happening. This is where it really is happening. And to ignore that is to turn a blind eye to where your high leverage is.
Really good stuff. Really good stuff. This gives you kind of a sneak peek as to what you can expect at the Relationship Marketing Grand Summit, because James is one of our keynote speakers there. And he's lined up with a whole bunch of other people that have golden nuggets, just like what you're hearing right now. You're going to get, hour after hour after hour of that type of training. And so we really appreciate your contribution to that, James. And so again, we're listening to Mr. James Muir, CEO of Best Practices International, best-selling author of The Perfect Close, which is a book you can get on Amazon. Hopefully you can get yourself a copy of that. And then in December is scheduled a new book called The Perfect Referral. Those books kind of go hand in hand. Referral is the best source of somebody to be putting into your pipeline. And then couple that with the perfect close. It's the best way to get transaction completed in the spirit of serving the person that you get referred to you. So good stuff. Really, really good stuff. So to close the show, I always like to give you the floor. That's always typically how I like to do that. I've boxed you in with all my questions today, and no more questions. No more questions. It's just free mic time. Golden nuggets from James Muir. What do you think our audience needs to hear from you right now?
Well, since we've been talking about referrals, I'll say this, because I know you're going to agree with me on this, and that is that everybody knows that the reason that referrals work is a principle called reciprocity, right? That's the principle that's at play. But here's the thing that you need to walk away with. We give referrals to other people, and we do service for other people, not because of reciprocity, okay? That is the principle, actually. Reciprocity does work, and people want to do stuff, but that's not why you do it. You do it because it's the right thing to do, not because you're looking for a return. And I promise, if you just abandon the, hey, what do I get out of this, and just selflessly give, what you'll find is that, first of all, it's like a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger it gets, right? And it becomes this virtuous cycle where both you and the person that you're serving end up getting better. They get stronger. They're both blessed. Their lives are enriched because of that. And so I would just say, learn and practice and strengthen your ability to just give service without any expectation of return. And then know that there is a principle called reciprocity going on in the background, and that it may benefit you, but that's not the reason that we do it, right? We do it because it's the right thing to do. In fact, I'll give you another example. I probably should have mentioned this earlier. So I was working with a healthcare organization in Phoenix, Arizona. This is about, probably 13, 14 years ago. And we're an IT system. So I go in there, and I'm talking to this lady, and what we had was really not for her. It was overkill. And so rather than try to get her involved in this, which wasn't a perfect match for her, I instead recommended a couple of competitors. And I actually gave her names and numbers and everything. And that was it. I never heard another word, right? 2 years later, I get a call from the CIO of Banner Health Systems there in Phoenix, Arizona, which is the largest healthcare system in Arizona. And long story short, we get involved. We end up doing, lots of demos and everything like that. And we ended up selling him $5 million worth of IT services and software. And then they went on over the next few years to purchase another 5 million. Okay. It was worth 10 million. I found out that he learned about us from this woman that I didn't even sell, but that she had referred him to me because she thought I was a straight shooter and would recommend something good for him. Now, when I went in there and met with that woman, I was not expecting, hey, I hope 2 years from now I get a big deal from Banner Health Systems. That is not why you do it, right? And so this is the point that I'm trying to make is you do it because it's the right thing to do, and the principle will work in the background and it will help you, but life is so much easier if you just give selflessly for the sake of giving rather than trying to expect something back. It will work. Trust me. Have faith in it. It will work.
Great message. Great way to close out the show for us today. James Muir, we really appreciate you. Looking forward to hearing from you at the Relationship Marketing Grand Summit. If you need more information on that, rmgs2020.com. You can go find out and get yourself signed up for it right from the comfort of your own home. A virtual event with some of the best speakers, trainers, teachers, motivators, influencers in the entire world, all going to be in one place. And you can watch it right from the comfort of your own home. So again, rmgs2020.com, go check that out. And James, thanks again. Appreciate the time you spent with us today. Great. Good luck with the book. Looking forward. We'll have you come back on when the book comes out, and we'll talk more in detail about it. Can't wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah, it's a perfect match for you. So I thought you'd be interested.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Yep, I'm excited to be there. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you on our next episode. We'll keep them coming. Go out there and be kind to people. We'll see you.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Relationship Marketing Podcast with Cody B, be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a review so that together we can get this message, The Power of Human Connection, out to the world. You can find Cody's new book, The Power of Human Connection, on Amazon or the Send Out Cards gift store.